Slide. All right, again, Assalamu alaikum again, and thank you very much. Sorry for keep you waiting. I think we can start now. So we continue from where we left yesterday. So we're talking about tables. So before I go, I saved the chat from yesterday. So there were some questions and some things, a few other messages. I haven't got the time to look at those messages. So I will take a look and then I will respond to everyone whoever posted message or questions or queries on the web on the chat box. So it's not that I'm ignoring anybody. I will respond to that as soon as I get some time. So we're going to continue from how to organize the research paper. I can take this out, it's easy. Okay, so the next thing is tables, right? Now, when you organize the table, and sometimes I've seen that people just put down the table and then they expect other people to understand it, right? But you can help people understand your data. That's what you're going to do. That you're presenting your data so that people can understand it. What you have done, and most of the time it's not easy to go through the table. In figures you can see and there's a visual effect, but in tables you have to read the data and then compare. So you have to have a title, right? And you have to follow the format of the journal, because every journal has a different format how you're going to present the table, right? So you have to, if you're submitting a paper, then you have to follow the format of the paper. So what happens if you don't? Then if the paper is accepted, then they will send it back to you, and then you have to do it again anyway. So in that case, you are just saving your time, otherwise going to delay. So you can send paper in any format you like to the journal. They will usually, either they tell you right away that, okay, you format it and send it back. Then again, you take some time before they see your article and then respond. So you lose 10, 15 days. Or sometimes they review it and then they will let you know that, okay, you have to do formatting in the final format. Then you lose some time. So it's better to do things right away in the beginning, so that everything is all done in a right way. So that you have to follow the table format. Make sure you put all the units, right? All the different columns, all the proper units. And the most important thing is, don't forget to put the footnote, okay? Because the table you have, and I'll show you the example, like here, I'm not sure if you can read it, just to show you that, there's a title here, okay? And then it's, every column it clearly says what it is, right? So you have all these column and rows. Try to make table as clean as possible. Like, you have to be consistent on few things, right? One thing is that when you're using a decimal place, so you have to be consistent with the decimal place. So if you're using 0.57, two decimal place, so it means that you have to use all the data in a similar way, right? And I've seen tables that, sometimes is like 15.936, and the next row is 15.2, and then the third one is 15.30. So, what I mean? So it's like the decimal places keep changing. So you have to be consistent. If you're using two decimal places after the decimal two places, then you have to be consistent in all. Same as standard deviation, you have to be consistent. And then you have to put the footnote. So like here, footnote means you have to briefly describe how the experiment is done and what exactly each column and row means. For example, I know it's very difficult to read. It's very small font here. So like here it says fatty acid with level greater than 1% of fatty acid, right? So it's like different asterisks. Like here, this one, like, so these are fatty acid. For example, it started from 16 to 22, right? So what here is we are explaining here that we are including only the fatty acid who are more than 1%, because when you do actually this table is plasma fatty acid, which is milligram per ml, mean plus 10 plus minus 10 deviation of animals fed high carbohydrate diet. Okay, so these animals were fed high carbohydrate diet, and we were looking that what's the influence of carbohydrate on the fatty acid, right? Because some of the carbohydrates, sugar, if not utilized, converts into fat, right? So the idea is to see what kind of fats they are getting converted into. So the fatty acids, as you know, they have different carbon chain length from C4 to C24. But some of the fatty acid present in very low amount, and some are high. So these are the significant amount of fatty acid, or the fatty acid which are present in significant levels. So it's showing that okay, so we are I have put an asterisk here and saying that these are the fatty acid, only the considering fatty acid which are more than 1%, right? So then the whoever is reading the paper, they can see that okay, the other fatty acid are very minor component, right? Okay, and things like different alphabets A, B represent a statistical significant difference at P lower than 0.05 between carbohydrate diets, no added lipid, whereas different symbols represent a statistical difference between control and emergent group. So it's just to explain that you have to compare, right, the groups. So there are two things: either you are comparing, the within the row or within the groups, right? Okay, so there are different ways. Depends, what kind of data you have and what kind of analysis you need to do. Either you compare everything to the control. So, for example, this is control. So compare this to control, compare this to control, compare this to control, compare this to control, right? Or you can compare with each other, like you comparing with this and you comparing this to this, and this to this using ANOVA, or you comparing this to this, and then so there's an intergroup and within group comparison, right? So use different kind of way to indicate that the differences how they are compared. Okay, so I put like numbers and alphabets, or symbols and alphabets, to say, well, okay, this is how they are compared. Okay, so this is just to don't pay too much attention on this table. I'm just saying that what you need to do is that you clearly explain a title, explain everything was in the column, follow the format of the general, and be consistent. Whatever data you have to be consistent. How many decimal you are using. All right, okay. So it's easy. Now the figures. When you put the figures in, and I'm sure everybody knows how to draw a figure, how to do the representation, how to convert your data into a figure. So in the figure, you always have like x and y axis. So you have to be consistent. If you have multiple figures, so you have to be consistent that whatever units or whatever description you're using, it is consistent in all the figures, right? And I'll show you some example that what I mean units. Also important that you put down the units of your data. The other thing is order of data presentation. We talked about this yesterday, that you have to present your data in a sequence, right? The figure 1 comes at figure 1, and then figure 2, figure 3, figure 4. So it should follow the same pattern. When you put all the figure together, so it's like figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. So it should be in same sequence. And here is an example. So what it is that there are three different figures combined into one. So it's one figure, but there are like three different groups, and within the groups there are like different treatments. Okay, so we have like y-axis here, so it's like plasma fatty acid milligram per ml, right? So what I mean that you have to consistent. Like here I say plasma fatty acid, like use the abbreviation FA, right? So if you're using the abbreviation FA, then you in all the figures you do the same thing. Not like plasma, you can also spell out fatty acid. So if you want to spell the fatty acid, then you should spell in all the figures. Not like in one figure you use the abbreviation, and the other figure you're using the fatty acid complete name, right? So the point is that you have to be consistent. Again, the unit, explain the y-axis. Now, the other thing is which I have seen very often, that when people put the figures, especially when they are having like similar groups, they have to be consistent with the scale. Like for example, here is scale is 0 to 4, right? 0 to 4, 0 to 4, right? All the scale is equal, right? Now, if sometime what happens that people like, this scale is only 0 to 2. Okay, this one 0 to 4, and this one is 0 to 8. So what happens in this case, that if it's 0 to 8, this bar is going to be, smaller, right? If it's 0 to 4, this bar is going to be somewhere here, and this will, depends on the scale is, it will be off, right? So when you're seeing like if the scale is same, then you can, just when you take a look at it, then you can see that how these three are, there's probably they are all same, right? Okay, if you just for example, if you ignore this last group because it's too much. For example, if you have only these three groups and you have a scale up to 2, right? It means this bar would be up here somewhere, right? This bar would be up here somewhere. This bar would be up here somewhere, right? And this is scale is 0 to 4. So this will come here and this will. So when you see it, you see that there's maybe more data look a little higher, but it's not because the scale is different, right? So what I mean that you should use when you have the figure, make sure all the scale is consistent, right? So that comparison makes sense. And then again, this is when you do multiple comparison, right? So the way you present is like, for example, I put down this A, right? So it means that all the graphs, there is no significant difference, right? They're all same. So alphabets which are same, it means like no difference, right? Now in this case, A means like, these all are, same, no difference, but B, this is B and B, so B is like, they are different, right? But all these B's, like, there's no difference between this and this B, so like they all have no significant difference. But all the alphabet, like this B and C, right? It means there's a significant difference between this group, and this group, right? And then, so it just shows you, like it's all B's here, like there's no significant difference between this, but they're significantly different from this A, right? So that's how you show differences when you have multiple groups comparison. Okay. Okay, now the other important thing is that figure legend, right? Typically, I've seen in many cases that people just have the figure and just a title, right? But by looking at the figure, you really don't understand, how the experiment was done and what else is there, right? So that's what you have to use the figure legend and a small title, right? You have to put a title for the figure and then you explain the content. What are different lines means, right? And what are different symbols means. Because sometimes you have multiple like symbols, multiple lines. So these days you can use also color picture. So you can have to explain that what each color means and what each symbol means. And so you have to explain. And then you have things like, make sure you have the units to show that how the data is done, show the statistical analysis, and then so here is similar kind of thing that you have this figure. So here is the legend, right? What it says that this is like plasma fatty acid levels units milligram per ml in animals receiving the starch, sucrose, and fructose diet, right? So it's starch, sucrose, and fructose diet, right? Total saturated fatty acid level, TSHA. So you define the abbreviation. So any abbreviation in your figure, you need to define. So when they're looking at the figure TSA, then they know that it's a total saturated fatty acid, right? Total monounsaturated fatty acid, this is TMUFA, right? Total polyunsaturated fatty acid like TPUFA, right? And total fatty acid TFA, right? So you're defining the abbreviation in plasma, right? Control receive the low fat, high carbohydrate diet with no added lipid, right? Values are mean plus standard deviation. Okay, so you have to show what are these numbers. Okay, these numbers are mean and these bars are standard deviation in each group, right? Different letter indicate that groups are significantly different at p lower than 0.5, right? So different letters means this A, they are same letters, right? But A and B, it means there's a difference between this line, this group, and this group. Is statistical significant different, right? Treatment with the same letters are not significantly different from each other, right? The groups with the same letter, they're not significantly different to each other, right? So you need to really provide some detail of your figure, right? So don't leave just the figure and then just the heading. And I have seen like in almost in every thesis I got that they just have the figure and just title. They don't bother even telling what this figure means, what is this data. That could be anything, like that could be percentage. So you have to give the units and explain that how no the data, how many replicates data of 5 animals. So provide all the details in the legend. Okay. Yes. Right. There are differences within group and between groups. Yeah, you did do the ANOVA, right? For example, um, so this is like comparing to each other, right? Okay, so this is within the group, but then this is also comparing this group to this group, right? So for example, this is like is B here, A here, right? So it means this group is not any different to this group, right? But B is there, it means this is different to all other groups, right? Other than B's, wherever the B's are, so it means the B's are all same. There's no significant difference between this B and this B. They all, you know. So you do multiple, two ANOVA or one way ANOVA depending on your data. And if you're not sure which test to use, you can probably get some help from a statistician. That's the best thing, because these are so there are some tricks to do the analysis. So it's always a good idea to talk to somebody who is expert in that area. Okay. Now, sometime you have to present a figure like your a pathway, okay, or a flow diagram, right? And in the flow diagram, typically what happens that you cannot really put the full names, right? If you put like this is phospholipase, arachidonic acid, phospholipase, eicosapentaenoic acid, phospholipase, docosahexaenoic acid. So they're big names, right? So most typically you try to use with different abbreviations, like this is phospholipase A, but then you have to explain all the abbreviation in the legend, right? Because if you drop this picture on the floor and somebody pick it up, they would have no idea, right? So you'd be like, anything you're presenting in a form that people have some kind of understanding when they take a look at it. So again, you have a title, and then you define exactly what's happening. So you have to define what's happening, and as you define, you also define the abbreviation. So here is like niacin binding to this receptor GP10, right? And the binding causes increase in calcium mobilization from extracellular into the intracellular, right? Calcium activates phospholipase A2, activated phospholipase, then results in the degradation of fatty acid, acts on the phospholipase and remove fatty acid like arachidonic acid, EPA, and DHA. So as you go, you explain it, right? Then arachidonic acid is a substrate for prostaglandin H2, which results in formation of different prostacyclines, and or result formation of then you start PG2 like prostaglandin E2, sorry, prostaglandin E2, prostaglandin D2, and prostaglandin E2. So you define all the abbreviation, right? Whereas for eicosapentaenoic acid, so you define the abbreviation, causes activation of PGH3, results in the formation of this, right? Whereas DHA can be a substrate for COX-2 enzyme and result in the formation of this. So you actually have to define the whole pathway, what is exactly happening, right? And define all the abbreviation. And I've seen in cases that people just put down the figure and just put down the title. They do not describe. So if somebody is looking at the figure, they have no idea what the abbreviations are and how, where to start. They don't know whether this calcium is the thing or this, is going there, or you have to start from here, right? So, or sometimes actually the better thing would be that you can also put the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, so they know that, okay, the sequence is going this way, right? So more you can explain, more people would, like that figure and would understand easily. Okay. Now, so far you have all your paper ready. You have you worked on how to work on the title, right? So you have to have concise, and you have to make sure that you have the title which exactly says what is in the content. It's not that title says something different and the content are something different. And I believe me, some people have really done it like the title says something else, and then when you read, there's nothing to do with what they've then presented in the paper. It's like remotely related. So you have to basically say that your title should reflect what about the contents, right? So we get the title, we're going to work on the abstract, and we talk about how we organize the abstract, few lines of introduction, and then materials, your objective, materials, method, results you got, and then discussion, and the last line is the conclusion. So that's your abstract, right? Then you work on introduction, and we talk about how your each paragraph should be stand alone, and you construct the paragraph because each paragraph you're providing a theme. The context we talk about, you introduce the line, your first sentence introduce the topic, and then you build on the content of the paragraphs, and then you link first paragraph. You end it in a way that is continuous to the second paragraph, right? And then you talk about present a different theme or idea or the same second paragraph, and then you end in a way that it should connect with the third paragraph, right? So you build your introduction and the materials method. We talk about important thing is that you describe everything in detail. The methods which are already established, you just provide the reference, or you provide the reference, and if you have made any modification, then you just explain the modification, right? And then you come on results. So results you describe, you have to describe in a quantitative terms, because sometimes people just say that okay, it's cause and increase and cause and decrease, but then you have to really say how much increase and how much decrease. And it's very common, like students, they write their thesis, they just say, oh, it's cause and increase and it's cause and decrease, or it's inhibited or it's stimulated, right? But you have to really say how much increase, how much decrease, how much stimulation, how much inhibition. Right? So people understand, as I said, like 20% inhibition versus 80% inhibition. People can understand, oh, it's very, very much inhibited. It's 80%. It was 5% inhibition, then people get the idea, oh, it's very, very weak effect, right? So once you have your paper ready, and then you do your discussion, and in discussion, the key points to remember, you have to discuss your data. And you have to discuss your data in terms of what is also known and what is not known. So you say, well, okay, we found this, other people also found this, and then this means that then you explain it. Okay, if you find something different, then you have to show what are the similarities and what are the differences between your experiment and the other people experiment. They may have used different cell lines, they may have different incubation temperature, they may have starting material differently, right? They may have different kind of drugs. So you have to provide some kind of discussion that why your studies are good or why your studies are not able to reproduce what is already known in the literature, the differences and all that. You also provide what are the limitation of your studies, right? Because in vitro studies versus in vivo studies, even you do studies in animals, which is done in the animals, and it can be data can be employed to human situation, but not entirely, because that human metabolism may be different, so things may be a little different too. But there's still you did these studies in a living organism, which is better than in doing in tissue culture, right? So after all that, then you are ready to submit your paper, right? So your manuscript is ready, right? First thing you have to do is this: check the instruction to authors, right? Every journal has, if you go on website, they have instruction to authors, right? You have to really check it very carefully, right? You print a copy of the closely related paper of the journal, right? So sometimes you get the instructions, but what happens that is like difficult to follow sometimes. So what you do is that you try to see the content of the journal, and then find a paper which is similar or close to the work you have done. So you look at the paper, and if it has same kind of figures and tables, so you print it, and then you follow the same format. So you have a copy, you have a template to look into, and then organize your paper accordingly. You really have to pay attention to the format. Some journals they will let you submit the paper with any format, and they ask you to change it. But some journals, they strictly say, well, if it's not format, they will send you back. They say, well, the journal is not really, manuscript is not actually formatted according to our instruction, and they will reject your paper, right? So it's better to, and always, as a rule, whenever anything is not only writing, anything you do in your life, try to make it as complete as possible. Because sometimes you say, well, we do something and then we'll come back and do it again, right? So what is not very efficient, because you probably is going to spend more energy and more time So you're working and then you leave it halfway, you go back and come back again, restart again. So try to make it as complete as can. You still have to go back and make changes, but then it will take less time, right? Okay, and for some reason, if you don't have enough time to, at least you have finished in a way that it would, require little or no change, right? So try to complete it as much as possible, right? And journals have limitation on certain words and characters, right? So these days, journals are more flexible because they're publishing everything online, but in the printed forms. But some journals they print both ways, right? They have online journal as well as they have hard copies, right? So they have a limitation that you can only have 5,000 words or 7,000 words and five figures, but you have more figures and you count your words in your manuscript. And if there are more, so you have two choices. Either you cut down the wording in figures, which may affect your content, or you try to choose another journal, right? So it depends where you want to publish. So you do all kind of this thing before actually you finalize your paper, right? And also look for publication cost, right? Because every journal now charging a lot of money, and people actually have started business. Especially there are so many journals, they are coming from China and India, and then because everything is online, so they are ready to publish anything because their purpose is to make money. Like and they charge very little, like $100, 200, some like $500. So you have to really look for the journal with some impact factor. So you have to do some little research, get a journal to see if there is an impact factor. Okay, where it is indexed. If it is ISI indexed, right? There's information. ISI is like a algorithm. It's like there's an index. So you have to see it is impact factor and it's indexing, because like if it's listed at NIH site, right? PubMed. Look in the PubMed and see if you find a journal in PubMed, because then you have chances that your paper would be cited by others, right? If it's not indexed or it's a low impact factor journal, then the chances are people may not look at your paper, right? And then your publication, the reward is the citation. If you publish some work and other people citing your work, that's your reward. That okay, people recognizing it and it gets cited, right? But if nobody's reading your work, you may have publication, but and depends on what is your purpose. If you just want number of publication, that may be okay. You can publish anywhere you like. But if you want, people notice your work, and for example, if you have a like you're assistant professor, you want to be promoted to associate professor, so sometime the reviewing committee is going to look into that, where are you publishing, right? And what is the impact of your publication, and that can affect your promotion. So again, it's a trade, that how much you wanna where you wanna publish. Sometimes it's the cost. Good journal actually cost a lot. Sometimes they charge like $2,000-3,000 for publishing a paper, and sometimes it's not that expensive. So again, you have to look for something, right? Now, this is an example I want to give you. So when you submit a paper, you have to write a cover letter, right? Okay. And then you have to do a really professional job, because sometimes the cover letter you write and the editor looks at it and say, well, it's another journal from Pakistan. Okay, just reject it, because they know that they have to, who's going to, if English is not right here, then and they look at the abstract is not right, then they return it to you, because it's not easy for them to read and it's really get very difficult. So things to consider when you write, it's not that difficult. And it's like a formula, that what you do, you put down, of course you have to put the date, and then you have to put the right the editor name, editor in chief, general name, right? There, Dr. Norton. And then what you want to say, that please consider the manuscript and title. So you put the whole title of your manuscript, right? So here is like synergistic anti-proliferation effects of docosahexaenoic acid and curcumin in SKBR3 breast cancer cells, right? Unique signaling not explained by the effect of either compound alone, or so this the whole title. So you put in the inverted commas, right? So please consider the manuscript and title. You put your title, right? For publication as a full-length research article. So you have to, provide here how you wanna consider this manuscript, right? Because the manuscript, it can be a review article, it can be a commentary, it can be, a small short letter. So you have to say you want to use a full research paper, right? So it's a full length research article in BMC cancer, right? So that's the journal name, right? The study, then you have to just explain briefly. You don't have to, write the whole abstract about this study. You just say what it means, right? So here is the study reported in this manuscript describes synergistic interaction of docosahexaenoic acid and curcumin on the proliferation of AR minus HER2 positive breast cancer cell, right? Okay, just simple, like, and then what you want found. We conclude several mechanistic data and array. So we include several mechanistic data and microarray analysis of the signaling pathway involved in the described synergy, right? Very brief description, right? So again, you please consider our manuscript title as a full-length paper for the publication in the general name, right? And then you just know one or two or three sentences that we have done this study, in that particular model, and we found that, right? Okay. Now, this is important when you write, the second paragraph, right? So what you have to say, the work presented in this manuscript is supported by funding from NIH grant, right? And a grant from the Showwater Trust, Indianapolis, Indiana, right? So you clearly said that, this work is supported. Now, next thing you have to declare is there's no potential conflict of interest by any author, right? Like all the authors are agree, because and you have to make sure that all authors are agree, right? So don't hide anything. Like, if you have, like, four authors, three authors knows about that paper, the fourth one has no idea that you're publishing and putting the author name. So the fourth one may have some problem. So you have to declare that there's no potential conflict of interest by any author. Okay, now next thing is the work is currently not under consideration for publication elsewhere, right? So, people think that, they're smart, they can submit the same paper in two different places. Whoever is accepted, they will get it, and then, the other paper, they can, retract it, or they say, well, they, don't want to do it. So to avoid that people submitting the same paper at multiple places, it is not actually allowed. You have to submit one paper at one place at a time, right? Okay, so you have to declare that, this paper is not under consideration for publication elsewhere, right? Okay, and then you have to say no portion of this work has been published or posted on the internet, and if accepted, or in BMC cancer, it will not be published elsewhere in the same form in English or in any other language without giving written consent of the publisher, right? So it's not that you publish this paper and then you just change the title and publish it again, right? So you cannot do that. And believe me, people have done that, right? They think that, these days on internet they can find out, but before the internet was not common, there has been cases that people publish one paper in one journal and they publish exactly the same paper, just change the title and publish it to another journal, right? And then, but they usually people, find it out sometimes they're not. But again, you have to say that, okay, that you're not considering publishing it, in another journal, or it will not be published again once it's published, right? Okay. The next important thing is all the authors have read and approved the final submission of the manuscript, right? That's very important declaration that, they it needs to know that all the authors are online, right? All cells used in this study were purchased from commercial source and none were derived directly from the tumor tissue for the purpose of this study, right? Now, this is why this is important, because you want to say that, you want to have not, the cell line you're using, you have purchased it, right? So there you have, legitimate control of the cell line, right? And sometimes you can derive the cells, and you can declare, if it's from tumor tissue from patient, then you can say, well, the cell line is derived from a, from a tumor from a patient. But then you have to say that, after getting the prior, IRB approval, right? IRB is like, the committee which approves that you can use the human tissues, right? It's important to show that, there's no human tissues involved, right? Okay. Now, next thing is please direct all correspondence regarding this manuscript to me at, you provide the address and your phone number, right? So this is very easy to write. Okay, it's not that difficult, right? So you have to write a cover letter when you submit a manuscript, indicating that there's your title, there's what's in it, and then you declare a few things. That okay, we're submitting this manuscript. All the authors know about it. When we have not published this work, or if you have published this work, like sometime you you go to conference and you present an abstract, right, of the same thing, and then you publish the paper later, right? Then you have to declare that this work has not been published except an abstract that was published in biochemical society, right? So you just declare, right? There's nothing, no harm saying that, so they know that you are honest. You are saying that okay, the abstract is published, or you can say that um, that okay, we publish in paper, but we are considering publishing abstract for a conference, right? So it's just a nice state. Okay, so here they are. Okay, now we go again. So this is all about a scientific paper, scientific publication. How are you going to do it, right? So hopefully, when you start writing, you'll take account of the things we talk in this workshop, right? Now, the second kind of publication is review articles, right? After a while working in the same area, you then acquire enough knowledge, right? You know everything about that particular topic. For example, if you're working with hemoglobin for like 5 6 years, I'm sure you probably read about 100 to 100 papers. You know all about it, how hemoglobin works, how the structure is, what condition causes decrease in hemoglobin, what increase, and all that. Then you can write a review article, right? And review articles are good because it first thing is make you organize what the information from different sources you put in a review article, and it give you a publication, right? That is a it's your publication. And then the thing is that people also cite your review article because you have a lot of information there. They can use the citation, right? So review article, they are subject specific. Okay, they are more focused. You start with the historical development of knowledge. How the who discovered the hemoglobin, how it was discovered, and all that. Give some kind of historical perspective, right? And then you reflect up to date current knowledge, right? How the information, like how this structure was done, and what is what is happening in that area now, right? So you go in a sequential manner. Okay. So these review articles, they serve as a good source of knowledge for unfamiliar audience. So for example, if I want to work in some area, so very the first thing I do is that I go and get some review articles, right? Because instead of reading individual articles, you maybe need like 20 30 articles, but if you get a review articles, you can actually read it and get all the information in one place. So they serve as a very good source. And then sometimes they're looking at two or more way of scientific issues. So some few articles you get, then you can get how different people are they are talking about that particular topic. Okay. Again, to organize a review article, you have title. It needs to be like interesting. Start from a broad topic and narrow it down, which is easy to understand. So you select that topic, right? Now this topic is little different. I mean, the title it can be little different than the research paper, because research paper you have to really very concise and you have to tell what's exactly going is in the paper. But the review article can have a broad title, right? Because you're discussing a number of different things. So it can be, a broad heading like, anti-cancer activity of something, right? So you don't have to say that, or if it's best for breast cancer or brain cancer or brain tumor or something, then you have to, you define it there, right? Okay, abstract, right? Now the abstract is going to be a little different because you have not done any experiment, right? So you are basically reviewing the articles, right? So you should define what is the purpose and what is the scope of this review article. Why are you doing it, right? List major points from that review you found, like because in the review you have sections, subsections. So you just describe a little bit what are the all each section means, right? And then you summarize important conclusion from those articles. Okay. Now In introduction, you explain the rationale, right? The why you're going to write this article, state your central question, objective, thesis, avoid sentences without a clear sense, right? Do not cut and paste, and interpret the content and rewrite, right? So I know that review article people just cut and paste together. You can do that, you can and paste, but then you go back and rephrase everything, so it doesn't look like it's plagiarized, right? So it should not be the same sentence. And I give you example that there's a different ways to write the same sentence, right? Remember we get the example, the pie hit John faces, and then there are 10 different ways you can actually modify the articles, right? Or in the sentence. So you just rephrase the sentence, and then what you do, interpret the content, and then you can rewrite the sentence. So there's your introduction, body of review, discussion, use a focus approach, and don't forget to cite proper references, right? If you write something, then you have to provide a citation, right? Don't just make a statement and claims until you have evidence, and then and you have to cite that reference, right? In conclusion, you discuss the controversies, why different people saying different things, right? Need for new research, broader implication of the topic. So if there are different opinions, then you discuss them. Then you say, well, maybe we have to and propose something. What need to be done as a new research, and what would the implication of that new research, or how this field is going to go. So there's all these things you need to discuss, right? Okay. Now, the other thing is that paragraphs, right? So we talk about introduction, discussion. These are the where you have to do most of the writing, right? Introduction and materials method is easy. You just do it because you know what you have done. Easy to write. Now, how to construct a paragraph, right? Okay, so there is actually no set rule how big is going to be the paragraph, right? So the paragraph length depends on the writer's topic, right? Coverage, format, and the purpose, right? Typically, right, as a working rule, aim for like 4 to 6 sentences, right? Then you can shorten the paragraph, or you can lengthen, enlarge the paragraph, right? Depending on the context, right? Whatever you're writing, right? So, so again, the paragraph should not be really too big or too small that that it doesn't look like that it look like something is missing. And this is crazy. People do all the time. They write one sentence paragraph. You see the heading and just one line, right? So I mean, it's not a paragraph. And the thing is that if there's something, then you have to include either paragraph before it, or include, maybe move it to the next paragraph, right? Or if you need to have a separate under separate heading, then add something more, right? Find something more and make it to a more than one line paragraph. So no one line paragraphs, right? I mean, like a very short paragraph may express a poorly developed idea, or one that really belongs to in a neighboring paragraph, right? It is too short, maybe move it up or move it down, right? Link to the other paragraph. Or if it's too big, too long, then a very long paragraph can be unwindly and confusing, right? Usually such passages contain more than one idea and can be divided, right? So you have a big paragraph, then you have to see that how you can actually divide. And I've seen I got one time I got a thesis, and it's like 3 page, one paragraph, no break. It's just go continuous, 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 and then it's just tiring. Nobody can read the whole thing and understand. Like you read pages, and then you think that somebody would really remember, what is going on. It's very difficult. But a small paragraph, at least you have like a focus and themes. There's some theme, and then people can understand. They get the message, right? So again, you have to build the paragraph. Okay. Okay, it is not enough to group related sentences together into a paragraph, right? You must also demonstrate this relationship. Otherwise, the reader cannot follow your line of thought, right? what it is like, because of cutting and pasting, people just, similar topic, they cut and paste and put it together, and it become like a paragraph, right? And then just move on, right? So, I mean, like, the thing is that, you can do that, but you have to move the sentence in a way, or you have to modify the sentences in a way that they are connected. One sentence connected to second sentence, and second connected to third sentence, and then and the whole thing presents some kind of context, right? Some kind of idea, right? For example, here is an example, right? Okay. So what it is a paragraph here. It says plants provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? Both plant and animal depend on oxygen in the utilization of their food, right? During the process of photosynthesis, plant consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen. And you understand what they're talking about? They're talking about like oxygen, carbon dioxide, plants, and all that, right? Okay, it's a paragraph, right? Now, if you read this paragraph, what do you think? It needs some changes. Okay, so the first sentence is plant provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? Okay, so we are talking about plants, we have oxygen, right? Atmosphere, right? Now, the question is where this oxygen is coming from, right? Okay, and then we say both plant and animal depends on oxygen in the utilization of their food, right? Okay, so, and then during process of photosynthesis, plant consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen, right? So it means like, we have to move this sentence first, right? So we say during the process of photosynthesis, plants consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen, right? Now we're talking about oxygen, right? Okay, because here in this sentence is a plant provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? If you use this sentence, then you have to say something about atmosphere, right? Because you're ending on the atmosphere, then okay, plant provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere. Okay, if you go high altitude or high in the atmosphere, there'll be less oxygen. If you go, close to the seaside, there'll be more oxygen, right? So you connect the theme, you go in a flow, right? So you're talking about atmosphere, then you talk about atmosphere, right? But here, since we're talking about the oxygen, it means we have to bring this concept first, right? So we reorganize this. So during the process of photosynthesis, plants consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Okay, that's our first sentence, right? What would be the second sentence? So, so plants are releasing oxygen. Why oxygen is important? Exactly, like, because the second sentence would be okay, during the process of photosynthesis, plant consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen, right? And what is oxygen? That both plant and animal depends on oxygen, right? So you're talking about oxygen here, so you want to focus on the oxygen, right? So both plant and animal depends on oxygen in the utilization of their food, right? So and then you put so what happens? Thus, then you have to modify it so that you can connect, or you can say therefore plants provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? So that's how you understand what I'm trying to say here. So you are connecting one sentence to other, so it's going in a flow, right? Still, people understand, but then it's confusing. Is not a proper writing because here you say plant provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? After reading this, the way it is written, you are not sure whether you're talking about the plants, you're talking about the oxygen, you're talking about photosynthesis, right? So it's like theme everywhere, right? So now when you reorganize, it's very clear that you're talking about oxygen, right? So you're saying that during the process of photosynthesis, plants consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen, right? Okay, both plants and animals depend on oxygen in the utilization of their food, right? Therefore, plants provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? It's very clear that it's nothing about what you're talking about oxygen, right? So that's how you basically, construct your paragraph. So you introduce, so so this is like two information you got, right? So you cut and pasted, you found the information that okay, during process of photosynthesis, plant consume. Okay, you pasted here, right? Then you try to move around and connect, okay? And then the third one, when you end the paragraph, you provide some kind of conclusion, right? Like we're saying there, therefore, plant provide a constant supply of oxygen to our atmosphere, right? So here it is, right? So during the process of photosynthesis, plant consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen. Both plant and animals depend on oxygen in the utilization of their food. Thus, plants provide a constant supply of this needed substance to our atmosphere, right? So this could be, there's like, conclusion. So, ending, right? The paragraph, right? So when you end the paragraph, you put like some kind of closure, right? Okay, this thing is closed, and now we're going to talk about, right? Okay, so then now, does plant provide a constant supply of this needed substance in our atmosphere, right? Okay, now since you end the sentence with the atmosphere, it means when you start the next paragraph, right? You should link the first paragraph to the next paragraph, right? So it means like, then you can say, well, atmosphere, the oxygen concentration in the atmosphere or atmosphere has different levels of oxygen, right? Depending on the altitude, right? At higher altitude, oxygen level in the atmosphere may be low and lower. So you're talking about the atmosphere, right? So the second thing would be, so this is like all about oxygen, this is all about atmosphere, and then you end with, with something like, which then connect with the third paragraph. For example, you're saying that, okay, because um, the oxygen is low at high altitudes, not all the plants can grow in that area, right? Then you said that, then you third paragraph say, well, the plants which grow in the low oxygen concentration, they have different mechanisms. So you kind of, one theme to other theme and the other theme, but you connect, right? When you end the paragraph, you end in a way that is lead to the second, paragraph. When you end the second paragraph, you can end it in a way that it connects somehow to the third paragraph, right? Okay. Now, this is also very important research proposal for synopsis, right? And I'm sure you all have done synopsis or not yet. You all have done synopsis, right? Okay. I think it's improved a lot when I can see, like, like 10 or 15 years ago when I've been here, like, since like 1993. I come on outside. I have a very long, I'm a frequent, visitor here. So, used to be very, very poor, just one paragraph about, and it's not very organized, nothing you don't know. So we gradually improved and improved, and it's like, it's in a lot better condition now, that there's a complete, proposal there. So in the paragraph, the thing you need to consider in a good proposal or synopsis, of course, your introduction, right? Some background. Okay. Then you have to really provide a sentence or a paragraph saying what are your long-term goals. You're doing this research, why you want to do this research, right? It's not that, okay, well, I have nothing else to do. I just completed my master, and and then I think that I can do a PhD, right? Okay. And okay, that's good enough. But then in PhD, there are different topics. Now, why you want to work in the topic, right? You must have some kind of creative ability or some kind of critical thinking there. Okay, well, maybe I want to work in the research area, cancer area, right? Maybe I want to work in the diabetic area, maybe inflammation, maybe, so you have to, think yourself what you're going to actually achieve. So what is your long-term goal, right? Maybe, if different people have different choices. So your long-term goal is to discover some novel chemical which can, cure diabetes, right? Or my long-term is goal to find out most effective drugs against breast cancer or brain cancer or whatever, right? So that's your long-term goal, right? It's very broad, right? And then you narrow it down. Okay, then you provide the objectives, right? Okay, so your long-term goal is, for example, you say my long-term goal is to find less expensive and most efficacious drugs to treat diabetes or obesity, right? Okay, that's your long-term goal, right? And following the long-term goal, you have to provide the objective, right? So all your specific aim. So to achieve my goal, right, I'm going to do, right? And then number one, what I'm going to isolate or synthesize compounds. Okay, isolate compound, then you have to provide where you're going to isolate some plant or something. Maybe you're working on, say, papaya. Okay, so so now you have a broad goal that you're trying to find some anti-diabetic drug, right? Narrowing down that, okay, I'm going to My objective is to find out, or to isolate the compounds, anti-diabetic compounds from papaya extract, right? Okay. Number two, what is again, you have like, at least two or three objectives, right? Then to understand the mechanism, right? Of, how they to characterize the anti-diabetic compounds from papaya, right? Okay, and number third is to basically elucidate the pathway or the mechanism or their effect, right? So it could be like anything. So what I mean is you have long-term broad goal, narrow down on specific, right? So objective sometimes also referred as like specific aims, right? Long-term goal, you become like very specific that exactly that's what I'm going to do. Okay, and then you have like your hypothesis, right? Why you're going to do, or sometimes actually you can put the long-term goals, and after that you put your hypothesis and then you put your objective, right? So you say, well, I hypothesize because or you provide some introduction that I've seen the people who consume papaya, and it's all like it's not fictional. I mean, it's like I'm just talking on top of my head, that you may have, to say, oh, I notice people, or there's a study shown that people who eat papaya, they don't develop diabetes, right? So my rationale is, so my hypothesis is there are compounds present in papaya that may have anti-diabetic activity, right? That's your hypothesis. To achieve my hypothesis, or to test my hypothesis, my objectives are, and then you say that first to, make a papaya extract and test for anti-diabetic activity using some animal model or using some cell lines or something. Second is to then isolate the compound which shows most anti-diabetic activity. The third would be to discover the mechanism, to determine the mechanism of their anti-diabetic activities, right? So there's all this. These should go one after other, right? So each has one paragraph, and then you say, well, okay, these my objectives are based on the rationale. Then you provide the rationale. What the rationale is that once we find a effective uh, compound with less cytotoxic effect, then it will help cure or it will help manage diabetes, right? So that's why you want to do this study, right? There's the rationale, right? And then you provide, how you're going to do it. Okay, so you say, well, I'm going to work with such and such, which has excellent facilities to study diabetes. This person is working in the diabetic area for 20 years, he's an expert. So that's why I want to work and do my PhD or MPhil with this person, right? So it just helps, this to reader that, okay, so it's not that you are going to start something very new, right? So he says, we have a research team. Okay, I'm going to work with this professor who is working in the diabetic area for 20 years and all that. He has all the reagents and chemicals, he has established model and all that. That will help me to accomplish my study, right? And then you provide, so here is like, in some case, you just long-term goal, and there could be just one objective, right? And sometimes you can objective in a specific aim altogether, right? Sometimes you have just objective, and then you can more specific, right? And then in these specific aim is like there are three components. One, you provide what you're going to do, right? And second sentence, how you're going to do it, right? And the third sentence is what you expect from there, right? So for example, say I'm going to determine the anti-diabetic activity of component, by components, right? Then you say that we will make the methanolic extract and treat the pancreatic cells, right? To determine maybe insulin secretion, right? Again, third would be, and then we expect that this compound would be able to have some insulinogenic effect, right? So it's just not a specific game. You have to provide some kind of little bit detail of each specific game, right? And then after that, you have to provide a paragraph about the significance. What is the significance of your research, right? Because my research is significant because papaya is very cheap, and a lot of people have access to papaya. It can easily grow in Pakistan. People can grow in their homes, and so you provide some kind of significance, right? Or you provide that, okay, there's a problem. There's that there's no drug available for that particular condition, and people working, or the drug which are currently available, they have cytotoxic effects, or the drug they're using usually the, if you use some like antibacterial, antifungal drug, you can say, well, they're all of them develop resistance very quickly. So it's very important that we should have different compounds use as alternative strategies they develop resistance, right? So you provide some kind of significance, right? Or you provide that once we do this, that there's a cheap treatment. We're spending about $3 million every year for managing the diabetes. With this much significance would be the cost of the diabetic treatment will be reduced to about 1/4, right? So you provide some kind of significance to that, right? Then you have to really say something, innovation, right? My project is innovative, right? Nobody has ever purified anything from papaya, right? So you have to tell that you're not just like me 2% that okay somebody has studied, you also are going to study the same thing, right? Just in a different model, right? You have to really say that why your work is innovative. Okay, so it's just it's take some kind of and all this research is about thinking, to develop your thinking process so that your brain is stimulated and you start thinking, get new ideas, right? So you have to really think, what is innovative, what is so new about your research, right? If there's nothing new, then you have to find something new. You have to modify your specific aim. You have to modify your long-term goal in a way that it looks innovative, right? Because there's no point doing something which is really have no significance, right? So you have to say no, and you have to really use the same wording, right? So like if you have like synopsis, like I know 3-4 pages, sometimes more. So you have each paragraph. Either you can use as a heading or you can just use a paragraph. So I would suggest using the heading. Introduction, long-term goal. My long-term goal is, and you can just provide some introductory sentence and then say my long terms are these objective, hypothesis. Just label everything. Pick a heading, specifically and significance, innovation, and expected outcome, right? You provide, excuse me, at the end, what you expect, right? We expect that from this study, we will to find a cure of diabetes, right? Or obesity or cancer, right? So, or, this is very broad, right? But from each experiment, you can say, that we can discover some mechanism, we can identify new compounds. So you provide, some kind of that what exactly you're expecting. When you do this research, what are your expectations, right? If you don't have expectations, then this means you're not thinking hard enough, right? So it's all about, thinking. So you cannot just come up and you cannot really cut and paste these things from anywhere, right? You can, introduction, you can get some kind of idea what to do, right? And what is the general theme of your research, right? But all you have to write, this is all, your thinking. Okay, you have to think about your long-term goal. You have to think about your objective. You have to, your supervisor may just give you a broad topic that, okay, that's why you are working. But you have to really think and see how other people have done and you write. So it's involved really a lot of, so that's, first part of your thesis. That's where you start, right? And then implication. First do this research. What is the implication? Are the people going to use it? Well, if something nobody likes it, then nobody's going to use it, right? So you have to think about its implication, right? Okay. So far we talked about how to formulate different kind of writing, like review articles, and synopsis and research paper, right? How do you start writing? Okay, and how you organize yourself, because you can do a very good job if you are organized. And believe me, it becomes like a enjoyable, rewarding experience writing a thesis, right? But if you are not organized and you just do things like haphazard, like do this here, do this here, do this, come back here, and all that, you're not going to enjoy it, right? You're not going to learn much about it, and it becomes like a stress, right? You're always in stress. Oh, you have to finish your thesis, right? You're writing things which are not right. Your supervisor saying, "Oh, this is not right. Rewrite it again," and all that, right? So you're going back and forth again. But if you're organized, right? If you do things right, and you know and you expect what you're supposed to do, then you can allocate your time, and you can, make a progression, right? The the thing which I would like to advise is that do on a regular basis, right? Uh, don't overwhelm yourself. Like when you start writing, the thing is that it usually takes 6 months to complete a thesis, right? You should keep in mind that you need time. You don't think that okay, I'm getting married. I have 1 month, and then I have to finish my thesis in 1 month, and I'm submitting. And how old my visa is ready to go to Canada. I've seen this example that people have send the thesis. I'm submitting this thesis, and I'm getting next week, and then I'm going to be here only for 1 month, and I'm going to could you please review my thesis and and send. It takes time to review the thesis and all that. Urgency on your part, really not an urgency on my part, right? Okay, I'm not going to drop everything and then, I can try if I have time, I can help you. So don't expect that, right? Okay, so you want to do something, I can understand there could be like emergencies and things, and sometimes, you cannot avoid, but plan ahead. You have to write, this is a serious business, is our learning process, right? You're going to learn. If you don't not going to learn, then you're not going to teach anybody anything, right? Okay, so and then the person who's going to work with you not going to learn anything, and then just the person you train, and then he's going to train another person. So it's going to chain reaction. You didn't learn anything, you didn't teach anything, then all it's going to sequence, right? So the thing is that if you're prepared, you learn and you prepare, then you can train other people better too, right? Okay. So writing strategies, right? First draft. Okay. The first draft is like first thing is that you make a rough plan deadline. Okay, you know that you have different sections in your thesis. You have introduction, you have materials method, you have results discussion, and then you have references and all that, right? Allocate time. Okay, that you say, well, I'm going to start from January, 1st January, so maybe I need a month. Okay, this month I'm going to do like work on introduction, right? I should finish my introduction by 30th of January, right? So just set deadlines, right? Then you can always then know, you can modify deadline, but then you know that how you're progressing, you're not spending much time or not, right? And then do small amount of work, but do it consistently, right? If you want to write, then you can allocate your time. Okay, by 7 p.m. to 8 p.m., I'm not going to do anything, just work on my thesis, right? But you do it every day. Believe me, you can achieve a lot more than you one day you sit down and then try to work at 5 hours doing the writing, right? Because you get tired, then your brain, unless you are superhuman. My brain doesn't work after 1 hour. So, you're reading something or writing something, then you get tired, right? Then you start making mistakes, right? So it's good that you have you fix the time that, okay, 1 hour every day for next 6 months. Okay, this is my time for writing, right? No phone calls, no disturbance, no parties, nothing. Okay, so this is your time, right? So make a rough deadline, right? Start the easiest writing first, right? What is the easiest writing? Hmm? Materials method, right? Because you already know, you have done your research, you have done your notebooks, right? Right there, right? That will actually it's like a priming thing, right? Or it's like a what I would say, startup. Like when you start the car, I don't know, have winters here, like in winters we start the car and leave it run for a few minutes so they warm up. So this is like with a warm up exercise. This will give you in the mood of writing, right? So you start your materials and method first, right? So there's the easiest one, right? Again, as I said, continuity and balance, right? You should write, fix the time and then be consistent, right? Okay. uh, omit unnecessarily material, right? The things which you sometimes do the experiments, sometimes you do extra things, right? You don't have to really put everything in your thesis. It doesn't fit, leave it, right? Okay, maybe you can use it some other time, right? So, and again, be consistent, on style. Okay, there are different formats, different styles. Like you have to choose one or the other style. Look at the other thesis or ask your supervisor. There's certain style, like how you number the paragraph. Some people number like 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Some people just have 1, 2, 3, 4, and some people have no numbering, just headings, right? So but whatever you're doing, has to be very consistent, right, throughout your thesis. One more thing I think that the, on the consistency is that whatever you do is you have to do in a similar way. Like for example, I've seen that people like all sometimes they define abbreviations, like they use a word and then they have abbreviation, especially for chemicals. They define a chemical and use abbreviation, right? Next page, the same chemical, they have another abbreviation. So, and then I've seen like 5 different abbreviation for the same compound, right? So it is whatever they want to decide, they just put abbreviation. They think that that's not right. Okay, once you define one abbreviation, you have to be consistent using the same abbreviation throughout your thesis, right? Should not change because it's very confusing. Like you're saying ASF in one, and then other way is the same compound, but the abbreviation is different, right? And it's not when like I got a manuscript somewhere, not from Pakistan, from other country, and the person was a professor, right? Not, and he sent the paper, and then it was so. I mean, like the abbreviation are all defined differently. In one page, this same word defines a different way. Other pages are defined different way. So it's just that you're not paying attention, right? Or maybe his student wrote the paper, he did not even pay attention, he just sent it for submission, right? Okay. Now, the thing is that you should be ready to have multiple drafts. Don't think that you write first draft, everything is going to go perfect, right? Nobody can do that, right? So the thing is that you have to write several drafts, right? First draft is just to put everything together, right? Okay, when you have everything together, your body is ready, that you have introduction, material methods complete, discussions complete, conclusions complete, the references there and all there. Then you have, the second draft, right? Then you go back and then you make paragraph as integrated part of the text, right? Okay. Then sometimes you have to modify. First you put things together, right? Then you have to go back again, and then you have to, and again, it's all creative thinking, right? You're exercising your brain that you try to see, okay, there's a theme for this paragraph, and okay, this is the second paragraph. Or then you say, well, my first paragraph is not really linking to the second paragraph, so you change the sentence or change the wording around in a way that you make a connection of first paragraph to the second paragraph, right? And the third paragraph. So that's like polishing, right? So you go back and then you do that kind of thing, right? Use word that says precisely what you mean, right? And we talk about this earlier, right? That you have to be make sure that you use that kind of wording, avoid excess wording, and avoid slangs, right? Okay, slangs means like when I've seen, especially students, they go overseas, like they enroll here, they may be going for 6 months to another institute in USA and England, right? And most of the time they speak slang language, right? Slang is like we speak in Urdu, the things which we speak but we don't write, right? So they also speak, but then people, when students go there, they just take them as an English, right? Although they're slang, but they think they're not English, right? And then they use that the slang in their writing, right? And so I'll give you an example, not a good example anyway. Well, not bad example, but the thing is that that's how things can be complicated. I got a letter. Actually, somebody has kind of CV or something and asked me to check it. This person sending this cover letter everywhere, right? And she heard this thing. She went to Germany and somehow just learned that thing, right? And then this letter says, that okay, I'm this, and then after I'm a straight person, right? Okay, and then like in the countries like in America and in Europe, straight means you probably straight means straight, right? But here this is a slang word, right? It means the people who are straight, they are like they are heterosexual, right? Because we know that they are homosexual, heterosexual. So people sometimes they tell that okay, I'm not gay. So but then this person writing in her letter, I'm a straight person without knowing that what it means, right? So that's what I mean that when you use slang, don't use slang because sometimes it means something different. What you think is not there, right? So avoid slang kind of things. And then revise misplaced modifier, right? And we go some of the example like that sometimes you can change a verb into like noun kind of things. right? Um, and then also check the use of this, that, it, and which, right? Because these sometimes they use to connect one sentence to other sentence, right? But their use is not really sometimes appropriate. People make a lot of mistake when using this, that, it, and which. And we will go some of the exercise, right? That where to use this, right? Make comparison complete, right? When you complete, when you're talking about comparing things, um, you have to really, and we'll go some examples, what it means that when you write, then sometimes you say that, okay, you know, there was 40% increase when you treat this with this drug compared to control, right? Okay, so you and then you have to define, you know, how the, you know, you know, control was like treated. So what I mean, and I'll give you some example. Like you have to make it complete, you know, comparison. Okay. Also make verbs agree with the subject, right? And then again, you know, sometimes there are singular thing, plural thing, and people always get confused what kind of verb need to be used, right? And we go some of the exercises. It's not that difficult. You already probably know, but sometimes people just write, they make mistakes. Okay. Now, the other thing is like the parallel description, right? Remember we had the example yesterday that how you do a parallel description, like, you know, when you use the wording, then we use the single kind of wording. If it's like multiple, if a sentence has multiple components, right? Then you use the similar kind of, you know, wording, right? Remember the example we talked about yesterday, right? So, and we go on this again. So you have the parallel description and avoid repetitions, right? In first draft is okay because you're just putting things together. Sometimes you forget what you wrote in first paragraph versus in the 30th paragraph, right? But people, especially here, what they like to do, they repeat themselves so much, right? And what they do, they cut and paste the same sentence. So if they even have a spelling mistake in one first time, they have the same mistake like 20 times, right? They just cut and paste the same. Like this is like, you know, we're using this that because this, you know, these sentences again and again and again. Once you said one, you know, then you don't have to say it again and again, right? Or maybe you say two times, but not, you know, every time, right? You know, if then and it's like I'm trying to think of an example. Like they say, you know, the like I was just reading this paper this morning. It says like, you know, serotonin, comma, a neurotransmitter, right? And then explain, right? And then it comes again and again, serotonin, a neurotransmitter. We already told one time that, okay, serotonin is a neurotransmitter. Don't have to say again and again, serotonin, a neurotransmitter, comma, and then serotonin, a neurotransmitter. So, so that's what I mean. You have to, you know, go back when you do first draft. You know, you know, you just put things together. And second draft, you go and do, you know, all the polishing, right? Okay. Now, the most important thing, pay attention to punctuation. And then we went through some example. Remember, that's how I start open my dog. Uh, Remember the sentence, woman without man nothing, right? And just by changing the punctuation, you can change the meaning, right? So same as, you know, the punctuation can change the meaning, right? So you have the second draft. Okay, so second draft is going to look a lot better, right? Because you are removing the things which is not there, you're making sentence more clear, you're linking paragraphs together, right? Okay, then you are ready for your third draft. So you don't think that your work is done, right? So what you do is take a break, about, you know, a couple of weeks, couple of days, so that you do a fresh start, right? Because if you start immediately, your brain is tired and all that, and sometimes, you know, you know, everybody has capacity how much they can think. So so take a break, and then when you see things, you will really find that, you know, things look different, right? Maybe, you know, I don't really have to say here, you know, why did I say this here? It happens to me sometimes. I say, well, oh, maybe I have to remove it, right? Oh, I forgot to add here. I also remember that, you know, this also I can include, right? So when you go third paragraph after a break, then you will realize there are things you can add or remove, right? So take a break, recheck everything again. Okay. You find the problem, you fix the problems, right? Okay, so that's your, you don't have to do much, like in the third paragraph, and then you're ready for the fourth draft, right? Okay, ask at least two friends, senior students, for comments. Give them a copy and see, can you read it and find, what you think, about my, right? People try to hide their stuff because they don't want to, tell anybody if they make mistake. They think that if somebody will read this one and then find the mistake, or somebody will read my thesis and probably get my idea or steal my word, all there, right? So I don't think that happens, right? You've done a hard work. If somebody wants to repeat, they have to work hard too, right? So people, it's not easy to, steal the ideas, right? And the thing is that you have some idea, don't think that other people can't get the same idea. People may get the same idea too, right? So, and then the thing is that if somebody else, looking thesis, if they don't understand, it means you have not really said things right, properly, right? If they have understanding that, what have you written, or they have questions, then it's a good idea that you have to modify it. You have to write in a way that they understand, right? Okay, maybe write it right again, show them again, right? But always, like, have somebody to read your thesis before you submit, right? Thesis I got, and unfortunately, not from this institute. There are other departments here in the university. I got from other departments too. I'm very sorry to say, it looks like that their supervisor has never read the thesis, because there are, like, basic mistakes and things which, like, you just open and then you can see. You don't even have to read. It means they just see that, okay, there are 250 pages, thesis look nice, nice cover, my name is there, okay, and then you let it go for reviewers, right? And then what happens, the reviewer are going to look at, and I will show one thesis actually, how the thesis is reviewed, so you get the idea that, how, to avoid those mistakes, because it's going to come back to you, and then it's going to spend the end of 6 months to make all the corrections, right? So why not just do the things right at first place and save all this time? And then you get upset, okay, my thesis is not ready, you have to rewrite it. It's going to make you feel bad about the reviewer because he has given you so many, corrections to do. It's not the fault of reviewer, it's your fault because you did not pay time and you did not do a good job, right? Okay, so what time is it? You want to take a break now? Maybe take a 10 minutes break, right? 5 minutes, 10, and then we go some of the examples right here. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll come back in 5 minutes.
So all of you in chemistry or CMBC or? Okay. Actually, there are few more biological examples. I'm probably so sorry for people who are chemists here. I don't know much chemistry.
No, we are very much familiar with the biology also.
Are you a fan? Okay, well, that's good to know. You have a sensitivity, PCMB, they probably know all this, right? But I don't know chemistry stuff, from cancer, structures. Yeah. What is that? When you instructions too? Okay. So we can start, I think, yeah. So far, how is it going? Am I talking too much? Just let me know if you're getting sleepy or something. No? Okay, well, that's good. Okay, so there are some few common examples, and this is sometimes people just write without paying much attention, right? So that's kind of things you have to look for the second draft, right? When first draft you are just trying to complete your thesis, right? Put everything together, right? When you do the second draft, then you look for the words which is extra there. For example, here the Colmar sees the pit plugs of red algae as being heavily related to plaques of acetomycetes, right? Okay, so here is like the word like heavily related, right? Okay, which is kind of just say that sees like what closely related, right? Because heavily related is not a right word, right? Closely related. Same as many mycologists have spent years researching for data suggesting a red algal ancestry with higher fungi, right? So again, researching, many mycologists have spent years searching for, right? Okay, the evolutionary origin of higher fungi has harassed scientists for many years, right? Again, as it's not an appropriate word. It has puzzle scientist, right? So these some kind of things, not that exactly you're going to use this word, but there will be a word similar like this when you use your first draft because you are just trying to think and write, right? But when you go to the second draft, then you look for the word, unnecessary word, or the word which may not be appropriate, or maybe like just that's too strong or too weak, then you replace that kind of word, right? Okay, now we're going to exercise some of the things which are often confusing, right? And people after interchange one to other, right? Like things like effect or affect, right? Effect or effect, sometimes when you say it's the same pronunciation, right? Effect, right? But it's a different spelling, right? So affect, right, is a verb. Okay, so it's like something is related to an action, right? To influence or to produce an effect, right? An effect is actually is a noun, right? It's a name of something, right? Noun, right? Result as a verb being. So how when we use it, so it says nutrient concentration was the most important factor affecting population, right? So it is influencing this population, right? Okay, so again, this is like a word, right? Okay, it's effective, right? Okay, making each end. Or somebody's phone. Okay, making each end on its thorax, or marking each end on its thorax with animal pen produce no apparent effect, right, on its behavior, right? So this is like a noun here, right? Okay. We hope that further studies of these endangered species will effect a major change in the allocation of funds by the federal government.
All right, thank you. Well, sorry about this disconnection. I did not realize that Zoom link was disconnected. So we're talking about how when to use random and significance, right? So random. So I just as I explained that random when you do experiment to randomly pick without any bias, right? Okay. Significant, right? So in scientific writing, used to refer statistically significant or non-significant result, right? After having conducted appropriate statistical test, right? So when you say that there are significant difference, right? And sometimes people say that okay, there's a significant difference, but when you use the word significant, you have to provide a p-value, right? It means that it is by p less than 0.05 or p less than 0.09 or sorry 0.01, right? So you must provide a so it is a statistical term. You cannot just use as a term significant or there is a significant difference. Means it means significant, but then this significant in scientific writing means that you have done some statistical analysis, and that's the only way you can use this term, right? There's another term like comprise or comprised. Okay, so or compose or constitute, right? That to contain or include. That's why we do not use comprise when you should use constitute or compose, right? For example, the vertebrate central nervous system is comprised of brain and the spinal cord, right? Should be like comprises. Okay, the vertebrate central nervous system comprises the brain and the spinal cord, right? So the central nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord, or the brain and the spinal cord constitute the vertebrate central nervous system. So try to use constitute or compose of instead of comprise. Okay. And then we had this little bit exercise last time, did, that, and which, right? This is also one which is not sometimes used properly. The that to introduce restrictive or defining element phrases or clauses, right? That limits your meaning in some ways. Which to introduce non-restrictive or non-defining elements, right? So which is means like the thing is which is actually is not very restrictive, and that is is applied to restrictive only that animals. For example, you're talking about animals, we say that animals, it means only those particular group we are talking about, right? But when you say animals which, it means you are generalizing that thing, right? That all these animals were treated. And for example, like the rat that had been fed a high calorie diet were all dead by the end of the month, right? So it's restrictive. It's only saying that only is restricted to only these rats, right? So the rat that had been fed, okay, they all dead, okay. So this is restricted to that. Okay, when you use which, you can still use, right? The rat which were fed a high caloric diet, right, were all dead by the end of the month, right? Now the difference is, see in this comma here, right? In this comma here, right? So whenever you use which, you have to use this comma, these two commas. So this is actually separate, right? So this is something that actually explaining the rat, right? The rat which fed a high caloric diet. So there's the additional information. So the thing is that if you take it out, we should have complete sentence too. Like the rat were all dead by the end of the month, right? It's a complete sentence, right? So it means when you put the sentence between this comma, you're just providing the additional information. So when you write and you want to provide the additional information, right? For example, when you say serotonin, comma, a neurotransmitter, which is a neurotransmitter, right? You put in, so serotonin, comma, which is a neurotransmitter, comma, X through its receptor. So when you take it out, then you say serotonin X through its receptor, right? Serotonin, comma, a neurotransmitter, comma, you're just providing additional information. So when you which means you just want to provide some additional information.
And you can, if, when you remove it, try to read the sentence. If it is okay, then you can use it, right? Okay. Plants which grow along heavily traveled pathways show many adaptation to trampling, right? And you can also use the there, but then here you see that comma here and comma here. So the plants show many adaptation to trampling, right? But you were providing additional information, plant, comma, which grow along heavily traveled pathway, right? So this is just the additional information that you're talking about these plants, right? Okay, here dead means dead plants. Okay, plants that grow along heavily traveled pathways show many adaptation to trampling, right? So you know these plants. So what it means that they're plants, right? Same species, but only those plants which grow along the heavily traveled pathway, they show the adaptation. So it's the plant dead grow, right? Means, for example, you have the same species, but it's also growing some other place too. So they are not going to spoil the adaptation, only that plant, right? So it's very restrictive. We're talking about that plant, right? Okay, and here, what it means, the plants which grow along heavily traveled pathway, right? So you're providing the additional information. So in the plants, so these plants, it means all these plants that grow along these, heavily traveled pathway, right? So you're providing the plant which grow. It means they plant, they grow. They don't grow any other place. You're providing information. This plant grow, and so this is very generalized, and this is restrictive, right? Only dead plants, but not the other plants of the same species. So you understand? And we have seen, this example yesterday too. Like I'll go it again. Like she showed the leg which or that was injured. That was injured. She showed to you specific, right? It's restrictive. It's showing the okay. The shirt was my favorite color, right? Which is blue, right? So which is then again is comma because it's the end. You have to put a full stop, right? So the or you can say the shirt, comma, which was blue, comma, was my favorite, right? The shirt, comma, which was blue was comma. So it's just providing the additional information, right? Okay. The book which that covers soil erosion is boring. That, right? So the book that covers soil erosion is boring, right? So you're talking about specific that book, right? Now, okay. The magazine I read at lunch had picture of goats, right? Okay, and here's your clue because there is a comma here and there's a comma here, so you can guess, what is going to be which, right? Okay. Now, a map would have made it easier to get to the city, comma was far away. Now you get confused. Half saying there, half saying which. I know you made a mistake yesterday. Yeah. See, there's a clue here, there's a comma here. Now everybody knows it's which, right? Okay, so you look for the clues, right, in this sentence, okay? So, you have to put a comma, but because there's the end of the sentence, we have a full stop, right? Okay, so always there's a comma, always before which. Okay, and usually if it's within the sentence, it should be separated by two commas, right? Before and after completing that information, right? So I'm sure you will not make this mistake again, right? You understand? Clear? Which and that, right? Because the thing is that here, I've seen a lot of people just use that. But you have to sometimes, you have to figure out where to use which and where to use that, right? Now, that's why we were talking about earlier that you have to make your comparison complete, right? And then here's the confusion here, and it's like 95% people write when they write their thesis, they write in this way: the average body length in Libellula, what's its name, Pulcilia, is longer than Palanthemius lydia. What's wrong with that? Hmm? Scientific names. Okay. Just think, there's no wrong answer, honestly. Exact length. Mhm. I know it's a difficult one because you're not looking what I'm trying to, that's what I'm asking. So you think that you will know exactly what I'm talking about. If I just explain, you probably may not notice, what I'm trying to say, right? Okay, so that's why, I'm saying you figure out yourself, if you can find out what is it, what it means, what it, don't, don't try to correct the English. It's like you try to understand the meaning, what it means, like the average body length, okay? The average body length in this species, Labelia pulsicilla, right, is longer than Rectimus lydia, right? Okay, so you're saying the average body length of this animal is longer than this animal, right? You know what I'm trying to say? Like you're saying this average body length of this animal, right? Longer to this animal, right? Okay, but that's not right because you're saying that average body length of this animal is longer as you're talking about the whole animal, right? So here you did not say really what of that animal, right? It should be like average body length in Libulia persa is longer than the average body length of these animals. Do you understand what I'm trying to say, right? So you have to make comparison. 90% people I can guarantee you like this way, right? When they say, well, the effect of this is that much, then control, right? Then you have to say the same characteristic because control is just one noun, right? So here is just one noun. You understand what I'm trying to say? Okay, so the thing is that the way you say that that average body length in Libella priscilla is longer than that of, right? Then that means this thing, body length. Then either you spell the whole thing the body length or you say then that of, right? Most people then they don't use this word that of. They just say then this one. Okay, so that's because it's like you when you say quickly it's okay, but when you write it, and sometimes it looks like I know what you're saying. You of course you're talking about this, right? Average body length, there's nothing else. But the sentence is not right. You have to say then that of, right? So it means the average body length in this animal is longer than that of, right? Than the average body length of this animal, right? So here, an average body length in Lepidoptera is longer than that in, right? Okay. Or they said that bullfrog were more abundant than any amphibian at site A. Okay. Okay. So what's think about I mean, there's nothing wrong in the sentence, right? Don't try to correct the sentence. Just try to understand what it means. Like bullfrog, right? Okay. Bullfrog. I hope you all know about zoology, right? So bullfrog, they are amphibians, right? Okay. So bullfrog were more abundant than any amphibian at site A. Right? So it's like this amphibian, and they're talking about the amphibian, right? So it means there are other classes of amphibians there too, like frog. What are the other amphibians? I forgot my zoology, but hmm? Hmm? Then you you're there somewhere, yes, yeah. Okay, so what it is, the thing is that the bullfrogs are amphibian, right? Okay, so bullfrogs were more abundant than any, you have to say any other amphibian at sighted. That's very good. Okay, so it means they're doing comparison, right? So it means the bullfrog itself is an amphibian. It means it was more abundant than any other amphibian. There are other species too, but they are more, right? So you have to say here like in any other amphibian it's cited. Okay, the bullfrog were more abundant than any other amphibian. Okay. All right. Now the second thing is that you have to. What time your pints leave? 5 o'clock. So I have to finish like 4:45. There's some time to go there. All right. 4:45 is okay. Okay. So, all right. Okay. Now, verb and subject, right? So there's always, again, some kind of confusion when people use verb and then subjects. So singular subject needs singular verb, right? And the plural subject needs plural verb, right? Okay. The size of all territories was or were reduced at high population densities. Which one is right? The size of all territories. How many was? One, two, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, 7, 8. Word, rest is word, right? You have to either one or the other group, either was or were. I'm talking about the people who are not saying anything. Okay, now here is the confusion. Okay, what are we talking about? We're talking about the size, right? The size of all territories, right? So size is singular or plural? So what we have to use? Okay, everybody agreed? Okay, good. Okay, the size of other territories was reduced, right? So you have to think, what is your subject? Okay, the zygote of acetomastes develop into ascospores. Develops. Everybody agree? Okay, wow, you guys learn pretty quickly. Okay. Now, so you understand you have to look for the subject, right? Not the second form. Like here we're talking about zygotes of acetomacetes. We're talking about a lot of acetomacetes, but we're talking one thing, zygote, right? That's similar. Here is we're talking about a lot of territories. But what is we studying? Is this size, right? So subject is singular, so we have to use singular, right? Subject is plural, then we have to use plural. So it's not the territories or acetomacetes, right? So now, you have compound subject, right, with two or more separate parts, right? They share the same word, right? For example, the color and shape of the beak are is important taxonomic features. Okay, everybody in agreement with R, right? Okay, all right, because you're talking about two things, right? So it's become plural, right? It's a color and shape. Oh, what happened here? Something missed. Okay. So you are pretty good in that thing doing verbs. Right? When the part of our compound subjects are linked by or nor, right? Make the verb agreeable with the part that is closest to it. Right? So you have two parts, right? One part or they have another sentence. So the sentence you use is usually the verb you use is like with the second sentence, which is closest, right? Okay. If one part of subject is singular and the other part is plural, then put the plural part second and use the plural verb. Right? Okay. For example, under experimental conditions, neither the newly hatched chicks nor its older siblings, okay, were tended by the parents, right? So here is two parts, right? It says under experimental condition, neither the newly hatched chick, okay, this is singular, right? Nor is older siblings, this plural. So you have to use a plural word, right? Were tended by the parents, right? It not has to doesn't has to go with this, right? Okay, the dominant male, along with his subordinates, right, protect the offspring when the troop is threatened by the predators. Okay, which one? Everybody agree? Hmm? Protect. Okay. Now here is the confusion because what it is, this says dominant male, right? It's talking about the dominant male. Now this is like is separate out, right, from comma. Whenever there is comma, it means this thing is separate out, right? So you have to consider this only, right? So the male, dominant male protects, right? Okay. Uh, so so that things can be confusing, right? So but you have to again pay attention how it is written. Okay, if you're putting the commas, it means this is actually not, but does not really belong. It's just an additional information, right? Okay, when you refer to a particular quantity of something as a single unit, treat it as a singular, right? For example, you say before each experiment, 10 ml of distilled water was added, right? 10 ml is more than one, right? And so don't say 10 mls. Okay, uses a quantity, especially when you're talking about the quantity, right? 10 ml, right? 10 gallon. Okay, okay, and then was, right? No. So when we're using singular and plural, we just stop after this, right? So there's sometimes it's easy, right? But sometimes they are not the same word, right? For example, algae, algae, right? Analysis, analysis. Okay. Bacillus, bacilli. Bacterium, bacteria. Basis, basis. Criterion as a singular. Criteria is one. Datum. Nobody uses this, but data, is a plural, right? Okay. Flagellum, flagella, flagellums, right? Focus, foci, focuses, formula, formulas, fungus, fungi, funguses, right? Genus, genera, hypothesis, hypothesis, index, indices. Okay, so these are some of the things you have to check before you write, because they're a little bit different. Inoculum, inocula, larva, larvae, locus, loci, matrix, matrices, right? Medium, media, right? Um, so mycelium, mycelia, nucleus, nuclei, ova, ova, phenomenon, phenomena, right? Phyla, phylum, phyla, protozoan, okay? Pupa, pupae, serum, sera, okay? Species is same in both. Spectrum, spectra, stimulus, stimuli, stratum, strata, symposium, symposia, right? Taxon, taxa, testis, testes. Sometimes the same pronunciation, but the spellings is different, right? Villas, villi, right? So it is just an example to show you that some of these the verbs are they're little different, right? Okay, I think we can stop here. What is this? It just I think it's that avoiding wordiness, like you have to avoid their novel method, which was developed by Jones 1973 for analyzing the growth of rotifer population, right? Just as Jones developed a method to analyze the growth of rotifer population, right? So you have to just, well, we can stop here. I think I don't want to miss your size. It's 4:45, right? So we continue this again tomorrow. Okay, and we will go some specific examples taken out from different people thesis, so that so not to make the same mistake again. So thank you very much, and but we need to also save the chat if there's a. So the people on Zoom, thank you very much, and I'm gonna save the chat and I'm gonna respond to you. So as I said, I'm not ignoring. I just didn't get the time yesterday. So as soon as I get the time, I will respond to your messages. Thank you.